An alien Empress hid as a servant to test her forced human husband, but he knew her soul. Inside the command deck, Marcus Hale leaned against the control panel, his calm green eyes observing the descent. He had spent years preparing for this moment, not just for first contact with an alien civilization, but for the arrival of someone who would change his life forever. The aliens were known as the Ceralians, a species whose civilization stretched across hundreds of star systems. Their technology was far beyond humanity's, and their politics were even more complex. Marcus had read every report, memorized every protocol, and studied their culture extensively. Yet nothing could prepare him for what was about to happen. The announcement came over the intercom, smooth and clear. "Diplomat Marcus Hale, your guests have arrived." Marcus straightened. A group of Ceralians was stepping down from the shuttle. They were tall, elegant, and regal. Their skin shimmered faintly, like liquid silver, and their eyes glowed softly with intelligence. The one leading them had a presence that made the air itself feel different, commanding, graceful, and impossible to ignore. This was Empress Celara. Yet Marcus had been warned she would not appear as herself. She would take on a disguise, perhaps as a servant or a minor attendant. The Ceralians had their own reasons for secrecy, and Marcus knew better than to assume anything. Still, his instincts were alert. He could feel the subtle tension in the air, the quiet energy of someone who observed everything. The person approaching him wore a plain uniform. She carried herself with quiet grace, her movements precise, almost too perfect for a mere servant. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her eyes, dark, alert, and unusually intelligent, studied Marcus as if trying to read him. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I am Lyra. I will be assisting you during the Empress stay." Marcus inclined his head politely. "Good afternoon, Lyra. I appreciate your assistance." His gaze lingered for a moment longer than usual. There was something about her, a subtle aura, a confidence she did not try to hide. It was unusual for someone in a low-ranking position to move with such assurance. Over the next few hours, Marcus observed Lyra carefully. She moved among the staff with ease, directing them without ever raising her voice. She noticed small details that others overlooked, like the alignment of supplies and the subtle changes in the environment. She corrected mistakes quietly but efficiently, and the staff responded immediately, as if they sensed her authority. Marcus felt a flicker of curiosity. Not an ordinary servant, he thought. There was a depth in her eyes, a knowledge that extended beyond her apparent role. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Marcus and Lyra sat in the large meeting hall. He had invited her to help organize the rooms and schedules for the Empress stay. She complied, working methodically, yet her gaze occasionally lifted to meet his, as if measuring his reactions. "You are very organized," Marcus said casually, watching her hands move with precision. "Most humans would find this overwhelming." Lyra paused, glancing at him with a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I am trained to adapt, sir. Order and efficiency help prevent mistakes." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I see, and if mistakes happen anyway?" he asked. His voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of testing. Lyra looked at him steadily. "Then we learn and correct them. Every failure carries a lesson." Marcus studied her for a long moment. There was wisdom in her words, a maturity unusual for someone in her position. She is more than she claims, he realized. The next morning, Marcus led Lyra through the estate. The humans who served him were polite but curious, casting glances at the newcomer. Marcus noticed how Lyra handled the attention with patience, grace, and subtle authority. She did not demand respect. It was given naturally. As they passed the training hall, a group of human guards were practicing combat drills. One of them stumbled, nearly injuring himself with his weapon. Without hesitation, Lyra stepped forward. Her movements were fluid, precise, and controlled. In a few moments, she had corrected the guard's stance and demonstrated the proper technique. Marcus watched quietly. He had trained humans himself, and he recognized the skill she displayed. Not only intelligent, but highly capable, he thought. Later, over a simple meal in the dining hall, Marcus decided to probe her character. "Lyra, may I ask you something personal?" he began. She looked at him attentively. "Of course, sir. Why do you serve? Many people would seek power, recognition, or prestige. Yet you move among us quietly, guiding and correcting, but without seeking acknowledgement. Why?" Lyra considered the question. She did not speak immediately. When she finally answered, her voice was calm, reflective, and precise. Some guidance is needed, even in a small place. True leadership is not always in commanding others, but in ensuring they succeed. I value results over recognition. That is how I serve. Marcus smiled faintly. Her answer was thoughtful, measured, and true to her actions. He felt a subtle respect for her and perhaps something deeper, an intuitive understanding that she was extraordinary. Over the next few days, Lyra continued to observe Marcus closely. She tested him subtly, creating small dilemmas and challenges. A shipment of supplies arrived damaged. She asked him how he would respond. Marcus examined the situation, assessed the risks, and proposed a solution that preserved both efficiency and fairness. Another time, a minor misunderstanding occurred among the staff. Lyra watched as Marcus calmly mediated, listening to all sides and arriving at a solution that satisfied everyone. She found herself impressed, even unsettled. Humans, she realized, were not as simple as she had assumed. Marcus' intelligence, empathy, and decisiveness were remarkable. And yet, there was something else, something she could not define. A soul, a core of integrity and perception that seemed to see beyond appearances. One evening, after the staff had retired for the night, Lyra found herself alone in the observatory. Marcus entered quietly, carrying a tray of tea. He set it down beside her and looked out at the stars. "The sky is vast," he said softly. "And yet we often focus only on what is near." Lyra glanced at him. "And what do you see, sir? What is near?" Marcus smiled faintly. "I see what is true. I see people for who they really are, not who they appear to be. It is a skill, but also a choice. One must look beyond the surface." Lyra felt a stir in her chest. How can he know? She wondered silently. He spoke as though he could see her entirely, not just the servant she presented, but the royal beneath. She had hidden for centuries, masking her identity, and yet this human seemed to perceive her essence without effort. For the first time, she questioned the wisdom of her plan. She had come to test him, to measure his worthiness as a partner and ruler. But Marcus had already observed her, seen her soul, and accepted her presence without judgment. A quiet understanding passed between them. Words were unnecessary. The connection was profound, built on respect, observation, and intuition. Lyra realized that the challenge she had intended to impose might no longer be hers to give. Marcus' perception had shifted the balance. That night, Lyra retreated to her quarters, her mind restless. She reflected on the humans she had observed, the strength of their spirit, and the depth of Marcus' character. She had believed that the alien mind was superior in every way, yet here was a human whose intellect, intuition, and moral compass were unparalleled. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in his study, writing notes and observations. He did not need to disguise his thoughts. He knew Lyra was not merely a servant. He understood her motives, her abilities, and her potential. Yet he also recognized her struggle, the weight of duty, tradition, and the isolation of centuries of authority. He admired her quietly. Humans were capable of growth, adaptation, and empathy. But he also understood the power of connection, how recognizing the soul in another being could bridge worlds, species, and hearts. Outside, the stars shone brightly, silent witnesses to the meeting of two extraordinary minds. One was human, grounded in intuition and moral strength. The other was an alien empress, hidden in plain sight, testing the very nature of humanity. And though neither had yet spoken the truth aloud, a bond had already begun to form, delicate, tentative, but unmistakable. The first day of her service ended, but the story was only beginning. Lyra had come to test him, yet Marcus had already seen through her carefully constructed mask. And in that realization lay the spark of something neither had anticipated, the recognition of a kindred spirit across the vast expanse of stars and the boundaries of species. As she prepared for the night, Lyra allowed herself a moment of thought she would never admit aloud. Perhaps humans are not to be tested. Perhaps they are to be understood. And Marcus, watching from his window, reflected silently, aware that the arrival of this servant was no ordinary event. She carried with her the weight of an empire, and yet her presence challenged his understanding of life, leadership, and trust. The universe was vast, the stakes were high, and both were poised at the beginning of a journey that would test their minds, hearts, and very souls. The story of trust, observation, and discovery had begun. The sun rose slowly over the sprawling human settlement where Marcus Hale lived. Its soft light reflected off the metal surfaces of the buildings, casting long, warm shadows. Marcus was already awake, reviewing diplomatic reports and interstellar messages. The world was changing fast, and he needed to be ready for every challenge. Lyra, the servant who was anything but ordinary, moved quietly through the corridors. Her presence was calm, yet attentive as she carried out her duties. Every detail mattered to her: the alignment of furniture, the timing of meals, the smooth operation of communications. But underneath her calm exterior, her mind was racing. She had come here with a purpose: to test Marcus, the human man chosen to be her husband by imperial decree. Her first test was subtle. A shipment of supplies was arriving from a distant human colony. Lyra intentionally delayed the instructions for unpacking, creating a small logistical puzzle. She wanted to see how Marcus would respond under a minor crisis. Marcus noticed immediately. He did not show annoyance or frustration. Instead, he examined the situation carefully. "Lyra," he said quietly, "let's review what we have and plan the best approach." She watched him as he methodically categorized the items, prioritized the most urgent, and assigned the staff tasks according to their strengths. His instructions were clear, precise, yet encouraging. Even the most inexperienced worker understood their role. Within the hour, the shipment was organized perfectly. Lyra felt a flicker of surprise. Marcus had handled a potential problem not through force or reprimand, but through strategy, empathy, and understanding. She had expected hesitation, or perhaps a display of impatience. Instead, he had shown calm mastery. Her next test was more subtle. She whispered a rumor to one of the junior staff members, suggesting that a valuable item had been misplaced. She wanted to see if Marcus would react emotionally or investigate thoughtfully. Marcus did not panic. He gathered information from multiple sources, checked the inventory, and compared it with the records. When the missing item was found, safely stored in an unexpected location, he calmly explained the situation to everyone involved. He made no one feel blamed, and he encouraged the staff to learn from the experience. Lyra was astonished. He did not merely solve problems, he elevated those around him. His leadership was not about power or authority, it was about understanding, fairness, and efficiency. She had never encountered a human with such depth. Later that day, Marcus and Lyra took a walk through the gardens. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the distant sound of water flowing through fountains. Lyra's mind raced with calculations and observations, but she could not help noticing Marcus' calm demeanor. "You seem to handle stress well," she said, testing him again. "Even when challenges appear suddenly." Marcus smiled faintly. "I do not think of it as stress," he replied. "It is simply a situation that requires a solution. Emotions can cloud judgment. Observation and reasoning guide the way." Lyra studied him carefully. He is not arrogant, she realized. He is confident because he understands, not because he assumes superiority. That subtle difference made all the difference. Her next test was personal. She arranged a small moral dilemma. Two staff members had differing opinions on how to allocate resources for a community project. Lyra wanted to see if Marcus would choose expedience, favoritism, or fairness. Marcus listened to both sides carefully. He asked questions, considering the long-term effects of each choice. Then he proposed a solution that combined efficiency with fairness, ensuring that both individuals felt heard and respected. The result pleased everyone, and the project moved forward smoothly. Lyra could not hide her admiration. Humans were resourceful, but Marcus' combination of intelligence, empathy, and moral clarity was extraordinary. She had expected a man who could follow orders and perform duties. Instead, she had found someone who could inspire, guide, and unite. That evening, the two sat in the observatory, gazing at the stars. Marcus poured tea into 2 cups, handing one to Lyra. "Do you often observe people this closely?" he asked, gently, knowing full well that she was watching him as much as he was observing her. "Observation is necessary to understand true character," Lyra replied. "It is easy to see actions, but understanding the motives behind them is more difficult." Marcus nodded. "True, and what do you seek in understanding a person?" "Honesty, integrity. Strength tempered with empathy," she answered, her voice calm, yet revealing more than she intended. Marcus leaned back, studying her. He had long suspected that Lyra was more than she appeared. Her intelligence, her poise, her understanding of human behavior, these were not qualities of an ordinary servant. Yet he did not confront her. Instead, he chose to act as if he saw only the surface, allowing her to reveal herself at her own pace. As the days passed, Lyra escalated her tests, creating situations that required courage, judgment, and resilience. One morning, a sudden power outage occurred in the estate's communication systems. Lyra observed as Marcus organized teams, maintained calm, and restored the systems efficiently. He delegated tasks intelligently, anticipating problems before they arose. She noted how he treated the staff with respect, never raising his voice, and how he balanced urgency with fairness. It was remarkable. She had expected humans to panic under pressure. Instead, Marcus thrived. Another test came in the form of an interstellar message that appeared threatening. Lyra ensured that Marcus received it, knowing it would provoke concern. He analyzed the message carefully, considering both the sender's motives and the potential consequences. Then, with clear reasoning and decisive action, he responded in a way that preserved diplomacy and avoided conflict. Lyra felt her carefully constructed plan slipping from her hands. She had intended to measure his suitability as a partner through trials, but Marcus had already demonstrated qualities that surpassed her expectations. His intelligence, intuition, and moral compass were undeniable. Yet, she persisted. There was one final test she had not yet implemented, a test of personal trust. She wanted to see if Marcus could recognize the true nature of a being disguised as something ordinary. She had hidden her identity as Empress, believing that a human could not understand her essence without being shown her power. But Marcus had already begun to see through her carefully constructed mask. His questions, observations, and subtle acknowledgments suggested that he understood more than he should. Lyra felt a mix of surprise and unease. He knows more than I expected, she thought. That evening, during a quiet dinner, Marcus spoke softly. Lyra, I have noticed something about you, he said. His eyes held a knowing look. You are careful, precise, and observant. You have a depth that few possess. Are you truly as simple as you appear? Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had been careful for centuries to hide her true self, yet this human saw through her facade. She measured her response carefully. I strive to do my best, she said, her tone calm, though her mind raced. Marcus nodded, not pressing further. He did not demand answers. Instead, he chose to continue observing, quietly acknowledging that she was extraordinary. His restraint and respect impressed Lyra even more. As the night deepened, the two continued to discuss philosophy, leadership, and the nature of trust. Marcus spoke of humanity's potential, of the strength found in curiosity, empathy, and collaboration. Lyra listened, fascinated. She had expected to test him to see if he could meet her standards. Instead, she found herself learning from him. By the end of the week, Lyra realized something profound. Marcus had already passed every test she had set. His character, intelligence, and insight were undeniable, yet there was one element she had not anticipated, the quiet connection forming between them. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it existed. Marcus, too, felt it. He recognized her abilities, her intelligence, and her grace. But more than that, he sensed her struggle, her careful concealment, and her desire to understand him before revealing herself. He respected her, admired her, and felt a growing sense of trust. The stars outside the observatory shone brightly, silent witnesses to the meeting of two extraordinary minds. One was human, grounded in intuition, moral strength, and adaptability. The other was an alien empress, hidden in plain sight, testing the very nature of humanity. And though neither had yet spoken the full truth aloud, a bond had begun to form, delicate, tentative, yet unmistakable. As Lyra prepared for the night, she allowed herself a thought she had never admitted before. Perhaps I do not need to test him further. Perhaps humans, or at least this one, are worthy in ways I did not expect. And Marcus, looking out at the stars, reflected silently. She is not what she seems, and yet I see her, not the role she plays, but the mind, the soul, and the essence beneath it. The universe was vast, challenges awaited. And in the quiet of this human settlement, two extraordinary beings had begun a journey that would test their minds, hearts, and very spirits. The story of trust, observation, and understanding was far from over. But one thing was clear. Marcus had passed the tests of character, not because he was perfect, but because he embodied the qualities of wisdom, empathy, and insight that transcended species. And Lyra, the alien empress in disguise, had begun to see humanity through a lens she had never imagined. Their journey had just begun, and the stars themselves seemed to acknowledge the promise of what was to come. The morning sun spilled golden light across the estate, But inside Marcus Hale's residence, tension had already begun to build. Lyra moved with her usual calm efficiency, arranging schedules and monitoring staff. But today was different. She had prepared a test that went beyond supplies, schedules, or minor moral dilemmas. This time, it was a challenge that could touch danger, trust, and leadership. For centuries, Empress Celara had observed and controlled from the throne. Testing a human, one she was supposed to marry under political mandate, was a task that required subtlety and precision. Yet she could not deny that Marcus had surpassed every previous trial. Calm under pressure, wise in judgment, fair to everyone, he had demonstrated not only intelligence but the human capacity for empathy and reasoning. She needed to push further. A message arrived from a supposedly neighboring alien faction, one that claimed to be seeking alliance with humans but hinted at secret threats. Lyra delivered the message to Marcus. She watched carefully, noting every expression, every flicker of thought across his face. Marcus examined the message carefully. Unlike others who might panic or assume hostility, he analyzed its content, considered the motivations of the sender, and anticipated possible consequences. He spoke aloud, but with a measured calm that made Lyra pause. "This could be a test," he said thoughtfully, "or it could be a negotiation tactic. Either way, we must act with care. Acting in haste may create unnecessary conflict." Lyra's pulse quickened. He had recognized the trap, or at least the possibility of one, without even knowing her involvement. She had intended to see if he could remain composed under the illusion of danger. Marcus had done more than that. He had anticipated it and prepared accordingly. That afternoon, she staged the next part of the trial. A sudden disturbance appeared near the estate's perimeter. Lights flickered, communication systems interrupted, and a small scouting party of aliens seemed to approach. Staff whispered anxiously, uncertain of what to do. Marcus stepped forward, calmly assessing the situation. He organized teams to ensure safety, checked every access point, and calmly questioned witnesses. His mind worked like a finely tuned machine, but one that never overlooked human emotion. He reassured the nervous staff, delegating tasks with clarity and fairness. Lyra observed from a distance, her hands folded calmly in front of her, but inside she felt a mix of awe and uncertainty. Humans had often been underestimated by her people, considered impulsive or limited. Yet Marcus exemplified traits that made her question centuries of alien assumptions. Courage, intelligence, empathy, he possessed them all, and he applied them not for dominance but for guidance. As the threat drew closer, Marcus did not act rashly. He opened a secure communication channel with the approaching aliens, speaking calmly but firmly. His voice carried clarity, authority, and a tone that was neither arrogant nor fearful. "What brings you here?" he asked. "State your purpose clearly so there is no misunderstanding." Lyra watched as the alien scouts paused, clearly affected by his composure. Marcus continued, navigating the negotiation with subtle diplomacy, ensuring the safety of his people while maintaining respect for the visitors. In the end, the confrontation was resolved without conflict. The aliens acknowledged a misunderstanding, and the situation was diffused. Lyra felt a surprising warmth in her chest, admiration, but also something more complicated. This human, who was supposed to be merely tested, had already passed with flying colors. And yet she knew her role was far from over. She had hidden her identity for a reason, and the final trial would reveal the depth of trust she truly sought. Later that evening, she invited Marcus to the observatory. The room was quiet, lit by soft starlight filtering through the large glass panels. Marcus was already there, standing near the telescope, examining the constellations as though they contained answers to the universe itself. "I have been considering the concept of trust," Lyra began, her voice calm but deliberate. "Trust is more than reliance. It is understanding, empathy, and willingness to accept the unknown." Marcus turned to her, his gaze steady. "And you wish to test my trust?" he asked, a hint of a smile in his voice. "Or are you testing my understanding of yours?" Lyra paused, weighing her words carefully. "Both. You have shown intelligence and fairness, but can you perceive the truth of a being who hides behind a facade?" Marcus studied her quietly, not answering immediately. His green eyes flicked to subtle details, the grace of her movements, the calm precision of her speech, the faint flicker of emotion in her expressions. He did not need her to speak further. He already understood. You hide more than just your title, he said softly, and I have seen it. Your actions, your decisions, your mind, they reveal who you truly are. It is unnecessary to disguise your essence with a mask. For a moment, Lyra's composure wavered. No one had ever seen her so clearly before. She had ruled empires, commanded fleets, and hidden herself behind centuries of tradition. Yet here was a human who saw her not with judgment but with understanding. You see me?" she asked, almost in disbelief. "I do," Marcus replied calmly. "Not just your actions, but the soul behind them. That is what matters most." Silence followed, heavy with meaning. For the first time in centuries, Lyra allowed herself to relax completely. The careful calculations, the subtle tests, the observations, they had all led to this moment. Marcus had not only passed her trials, but had demonstrated qualities she had never fully expected from a human: insight, integrity, and intuition. The next day, Lyra arranged a final practical test, one that involved collaboration rather than confrontation. She created a scenario where both she and Marcus would need to work together to solve a simulated crisis. A false alarm in the communication grid triggered a series of events designed to test coordination, judgment, and strategic thinking. Marcus approached it as he had every other challenge, calmly, methodically, and with an awareness of both people and systems. He delegated roles intelligently, anticipated failures, and adjusted plans on the fly. Lyra, observing him closely, realized that this test was no longer necessary. His leadership, his character, and his perception had already proven him more than capable. During the exercise, Marcus glanced at her. "Your instructions are precise," he said, "but your intentions are even clearer. You trust me to act wisely, and that trust is not misplaced." Lyra's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and admiration. "He understands me in ways I did not expect," she thought. "He does not need my trials. He embodies the qualities I was sent to measure." By the evening, the two sat together in the observatory once more. Outside, the stars twinkled, distant and cold, but inside there was warmth, a connection forged not by duty or politics, but by understanding and respect. "You have passed every test I could devise," Lyra said quietly, her voice calm but carrying emotion beneath the surface. "More than I anticipated, but there is one thing I have not tested: your understanding of me." Marcus smiled faintly. "I understand more than you know. I see the essence of your mind, your choices, and your values. That is what matters. The rest, titles, masks, appearances, are secondary." Lyra felt a quiet surprise. This human, chosen by political necessity, had demonstrated wisdom and insight that rivaled even the most advanced alien minds. His perception was keen, his judgments fair, and his empathy deep. For the first time, she questioned the purpose of her disguise. She had come to test him, to measure his worthiness as a partner and perhaps as a ruler. Yet Marcus had already revealed his worth through his actions, his mind, and his soul. The quiet connection between them deepened. Words were no longer necessary to convey trust, understanding, or respect. They had observed, tested, and revealed themselves in ways that transcended language. As the night grew deeper, Lyra reflected on her own feelings. Admiration, respect, and something she could not yet name stirred within her. Marcus had passed every test she had devised, not only with skill, but with character, insight, and a depth of understanding that few beings, human or alien, could match. Meanwhile, Marcus reflected silently on the day's events. He had anticipated many possibilities, yet Lyra's abilities and precision continued to impress him. He understood her role, her intentions, and her extraordinary nature. But he also recognized the delicate bond forming between them, a bond not of obligation, but of mutual respect, insight, and emerging trust. The stars above seemed to shine in quiet approval, witnesses to the growth of understanding between human and alien. Two extraordinary beings had met, not as ruler and subject, but as equals, observing, learning, and recognizing the value in each other's character. Lyra, the alien Empress in disguise, had come to test Marcus. But in truth, it was Marcus who had revealed the qualities she truly sought: courage, wisdom, empathy, and integrity. And Marcus, the human diplomat, had quietly seen her for who she truly was, beyond disguise, beyond role, beyond expectation. The trial was over, yet the journey had only begun. Challenges awaited in the wider universe, in diplomacy, leadership, and the unpredictable dynamics of interstellar relations. But for now, two extraordinary minds had connected. Two extraordinary souls had recognized one another. And in that quiet moment beneath the vast expanse of stars, the human and the alien Empress understood one truth above all. Trust, understanding, and insight could bridge worlds, species, and even centuries of expectation. The trial of trust had ended, but the story of connection, discovery, and human ingenuity was only just beginning. The morning sun painted the estate in soft gold, filtering through the wide windows of Marcus Hale's residence. The air was calm, but inside, a quiet tension simmered. Lyra moved gracefully through the corridors, her composure flawless. Yet today, she carried a weight she had never allowed herself to feel before, the truth she had hidden for centuries, and the realization that the human before her had already seen through her carefully constructed mask. For centuries, Empress Celara had ruled her people with intellect, strategy, and unmatched precision. She had never revealed herself fully to anyone, not even to her closest advisors. Secrets were her armor, calculation was her strength. But Marcus, this human, chosen as her political husband, had already glimpsed the essence she tried so hard to conceal. And now the time had come for revelation. She found Marcus in the observatory, as he often was, studying the stars with thoughtful calm. The universe, with all its vastness and mystery, seemed to reflect the questions that both of them carried silently. "Marcus," she began, her voice calm but carrying a rare weight of seriousness. "There is something you must know, something I should have revealed from the beginning." Marcus turned to her, his green eyes steady. "I have already sensed as much," he replied quietly. "You are not the servant you appear to be. Your mind, your presence, they speak of someone far greater." Lyra's composure faltered for the briefest moment. "He sees everything," she thought. "Even without my words, he understands my essence." She took a deep breath, letting the centuries of caution slip, even if only slightly. "I am Empress Celara," she said finally, her voice calm but resonant with authority. "I rule the Ceralian Empire. I came here hidden as a servant to understand you, to test your character and judge your worthiness." Marcus studied her for a long moment, but there was no surprise in his expression. Instead, he smiled faintly, as though confirming what he had already known. "You are exactly as I suspected," he said softly. "Not just your mind, but your soul. I did not need your title or disguise to see who you are. I saw it in your actions, your judgments, and your intentions. That is what matters." For a moment, silence filled the room. The revelation, which could have caused tension, fear, or anger, instead became a bridge between them. Lyra realized that she had expected to control the revelation, to test him further, yet he had already passed the ultimate test, the test of perception, understanding, and empathy. You understood me?" she asked, a hint of disbelief in her voice. "I did," Marcus replied, calm and sincere. "I have observed not only your actions, but the purpose behind them. Your wisdom, your patience, and your insight reveal who you truly are. That is what I value, not the titles or appearances." Lyra felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest, a mix of admiration, respect, and relief. She had hidden for centuries, yet this human had seen through her carefully constructed facade and accepted her fully. For the first time in centuries, she allowed herself to feel vulnerability without fear. They spoke for hours, sharing thoughts, philosophies, and perspectives. Marcus spoke of humanity, its resilience, adaptability, and moral strength. He described how humans could thrive even in adversity, how their ingenuity often overcame limitations, and how empathy and curiosity were as valuable as intelligence or power. Lyra listened attentively, absorbing every word. She had expected to teach him, to guide him, yet she found herself learning. The human mind, she realized, was more complex, adaptable, and capable than many in her empire had imagined. Marcus' insight, tempered with compassion, challenged her assumptions about what it meant to be wise, strong, and capable. At one point, Lyra spoke of the responsibilities she carried as Empress, the lives of billions resting on her decisions, the weight of political alliances, and the centuries of expectation that shaped her every move. Marcus listened carefully without judgment, offering perspectives that balanced reason and empathy. "You have carried more than most could bear," Marcus said quietly. "Yet you remain measured, insightful, and capable. That is remarkable, and it is why trust is earned so easily between us." Lyra felt a deep respect for him grow. Humans had often been underestimated, seen as fragile or short-sighted. Yet Marcus embodied qualities that transcended species: intelligence, judgment, courage, and moral clarity. He had proven that humanity could not only survive but thrive in the galaxy, and that insight, empathy, and intuition were as powerful as any advanced technology. "You judge people not by appearances but by their actions and intentions," she said, almost in awe. "That is why you see me as I truly am." "I do," Marcus replied calmly, "and I see your wisdom, your strength, and your care for others. That is what matters more than anything else. A title can hide a soul, but it cannot change it." The revelation changed their relationship in subtle ways. Lyra no longer needed to observe him secretly. Marcus already understood. Trust formed naturally, a quiet bond built on mutual insight and respect. Over the following days, they worked together to discuss the political implications of their union. Their partnership was no longer merely a formality of diplomacy. It had become a meeting of minds, a collaboration that could shape the future of interstellar relations. Lyra shared insights about the Sauralian Empire, its strengths, vulnerabilities, and ambitions. Marcus listened, absorbing the information while offering ideas on diplomacy, strategy, and collaboration. Their discussions were balanced, thoughtful, and productive, a true partnership of equals. "You think like a ruler," Marcus observed one evening. "Not just in strategy, but in empathy. That is rare, even among your own people." "And you think like a leader," Lyra replied softly. "Not just in intellect, but in character. That is rare among humans as well." They smiled at each other, a quiet acknowledgement of the respect and understanding that had grown between them. No words were needed to convey the trust forming in that space, under the watchful stars. Yet, as the revelation settled, they both understood that challenges awaited. Political tensions were rising between factions within the Sauralian Empire. Other alien civilizations watched humanity's growing influence with a mixture of curiosity and caution. And the galaxy itself was a place of uncertainty, where intelligence, diplomacy, and human ingenuity would be tested. One evening, as they walked through the gardens, Lyra spoke softly. "Marcus, I came here to test you, to judge your worthiness. But now I see that I misjudged both humanity and you. You do not need to be tested, you reveal your essence naturally, through action and thought." Marcus nodded. "And you do the same. Masks and titles can hide much, but they cannot hide wisdom, character, or the soul. That is what I value, and that is why I trust you." Lyra felt a quiet sense of peace. The weight of centuries of isolation, of leadership, and of expectation seemed lighter in his presence. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to relax completely, not as Empress, not as a ruler, not as a strategist, but as herself. Their conversations turned toward the future. They discussed alliances, potential threats, and the ways in which humans and Sauralians could work together. Marcus spoke with confidence, reasoning, and insight, showing not only diplomacy but the ingenuity that had allowed humanity to thrive against the odds. Lyra saw clearly that humans were not merely a developing species. They were adaptable, intelligent, and capable of extraordinary growth. "You inspire confidence," Lyra said quietly, "not just in humans but in me as well." "And you inspire respect," Marcus replied. "Not because of your title but because of your character and wisdom. That is why partnership between us is not just political. It is meaningful, practical, and powerful." Over time, the estate became a place of collaboration and learning. Staff members observed the partnership between Marcus and Lyra, noting how mutual respect and understanding guided decisions and actions. The human staff learned from her precision and insight, while Lyra observed the humans' resilience, creativity, and loyalty. One night, standing together on a balcony overlooking the city lights, Lyra reflected on the journey so far. She had come to test a human to measure his worthiness. Yet in truth, she had discovered something more profound. The human mind and soul were far richer than she had imagined. And Marcus, through wisdom, observation, and empathy, had revealed not only her essence but the potential of humanity itself. "You have taught me as much as I have taught you," she admitted softly. "And you have taught me as much as I have taught you," Marcus replied, smiling. "Not through titles, masks, or tests, but through understanding, trust, and observation. That is how all true knowledge is gained." In that moment, the barriers between species, titles, and expectations seemed to vanish. Trust had been earned, understanding had been achieved, and a quiet partnership had formed, one that combined human ingenuity with alien wisdom. creating a foundation strong enough to face the challenges of a galaxy full of uncertainty. The revelation of her identity had not caused conflict, fear, or mistrust. Instead, it had deepened the connection between them. Lyra no longer needed to hide, and Marcus no longer needed to guess. Together, they could face the universe with intelligence, courage, and collaboration. And as the stars stretched infinitely above them, silent witnesses to the meeting of two extraordinary minds, they both understood a fundamental truth. Human insight, moral strength, and ingenuity could bridge worlds, overcome uncertainty, and create a foundation for lasting partnership. The time of revelation had passed, and understanding had taken its place. But beyond the walls of the estate, in the wider galaxy, challenges were rising. Rogue factions, political rivals, and unexpected dangers loomed on the horizon. Their partnership would soon be tested, not through trials of character, but through trials of strategy, leadership, and ingenuity. For now, though, the human and the alien Empress stood side by side, ready for whatever the universe might bring. They had seen each other fully, understood each other deeply, and formed a bond that transcended species, tradition, and expectation. The galaxy awaited, and together Marcus Hale and Empress Sellara were ready to meet it. The galaxy was not a quiet place. Even as Marcus Hale and Empress Sellara walked the gardens of his estate, peace felt fragile, like a thin layer of ice over a deep ocean. Reports had been arriving steadily. Rogue factions within the Ceralian Empire, dissatisfied with the growing alliance between humans and Ceralians, were stirring unrest. Nearby civilizations were watching, curious or wary, waiting to see how humanity would respond to its first real test on an interstellar scale. Marcus and Sellara sat together in the observatory, reviewing the reports. The stars outside stretched infinitely, but the urgency inside the room was palpable. "They have seized one of the outer colonies," Sellara said, her calm tone belying the worry in her eyes. "It is a strategic position. If they consolidate control, it could threaten the alliance." Marcus studied the holographic map projected before them. Tiny points of light marked the colonies, fleets, and movements of the factions. He noticed patterns that others might have overlooked: gaps in patrol routes, predictable response times, and weak points in the rogue forces' supply lines. "They underestimate humanity," he said quietly, "and they underestimate what we can achieve together." Sellara raised an eyebrow, both impressed and intrigued. "You are confident." "I am observant," Marcus replied, "and humans excel in adaptability, problem-solving, and seeing opportunities others miss. We can use that to turn the situation in our favor." The plan they devised relied on combining human ingenuity with Ceralian strategy. Humans had a talent for improvisation, creativity, and rapid adaptation. Ceralians had advanced technology, intelligence networks, and disciplined fleets. Together, they could form a solution no single species could achieve alone. Lyra, no longer hiding her identity, coordinated with Marcus to deploy both human and Ceralian resources. She issued commands with precision, while Marcus handled logistics, communication, and the creative problem-solving necessary to anticipate the rogue faction's moves. First, they sent decoy fleets to draw attention, while a small strike team moved silently to reclaim the outer colony. Marcus personally oversaw the strategy, ensuring that minimal lives would be lost, relying on careful observation and rapid adjustments to counter any unexpected variables. The operation began at dawn. Human ships, agile and surprisingly fast, maneuvered with clever unpredictability. Ceralian warships followed calculated patterns, forming impenetrable defenses where necessary. Together, they created a combination of improvisation and strategy that the rogue faction could not anticipate. Lyra observed from the command center, her calm demeanor hiding the excitement she felt. Marcus' calculations, adjustments, and predictions were precise, and yet they had the flexibility that even advanced Ceralian algorithms could not fully replicate. Humans thrived in uncertainty, and Marcus embodied that quality perfectly. Hours passed. Fleets moved across the holographic map, sensors tracked every movement, and tension mounted. A single mistake could cost the colony and shift the balance of power in the sector. Yet Marcus remained calm, issuing guidance, adjusting plans, and encouraging both human and Ceralian crews. Finally, the decisive moment arrived. Using a combination of decoy maneuvers and coordinated strikes, they isolated the rogue faction's fleet. Marcus had predicted the enemy's response to every stimulus, setting traps without using force unnecessarily. The rogue ships were surrounded, cut off from supplies, and forced to surrender. The operation was a success. The outer colony was secured, and the rogue faction's influence was neutralized without mass destruction. Humans and Ceralians had worked together, each species complementing the other's strengths. Marcus' leadership, insight, and adaptability had been crucial, a testament to the ingenuity and moral clarity of humanity. Solara turned to him, her expression both proud and genuinely impressed. "You have done what many of my generals could not achieve," she said. "Your mind, your reasoning, and your understanding of people, it is extraordinary." Marcus shook his head, a humble smile on his face. "I did what humans have always done, observe, adapt, and solve problems creatively, but I could not have done this alone. It was our combined efforts, humans and Ceralians working together, that succeeded." Lyra felt something she had never expected, admiration not just for his mind, but for his character. He had treated every member of the team with respect, considered the consequences of every action, and never allowed ego to cloud judgment. Humanity's strength, she realized, lay not only in intelligence, but in moral clarity and empathy, qualities that could influence even the most complex alien politics. After the crisis, the humans and Ceralians celebrated quietly. It was not a time for grand proclamations, but a moment to acknowledge what had been achieved. The alliance had been tested in a real-world scenario, and humanity had proven its ingenuity, resilience, and value. Solara walked with Marcus through the gardens that evening, the stars shining brilliantly overhead. The calm after the storm was a welcome relief, but they both knew that the galaxy held many more challenges. "You have proven something extraordinary," Solara said softly. "Not just your capability as a human leader, but the potential of your species." Marcus looked at her, his eyes reflecting both thought and warmth. "We have proven that together, humans and Ceralians can achieve more than either could alone. Ingenuity, adaptability, and understanding are powerful tools, perhaps the most powerful in the galaxy." Solara smiled, a rare softness in her expression. "I underestimated humanity once. But now I see that your species has strength, wisdom, and insight that can rival any empire in the stars. And I see you not just as a human, but as a soul capable of leadership, understanding, and vision." Marcus felt a quiet honor. The political marriage that had begun as a duty now transformed into something greater, a true partnership built on trust, insight, and shared responsibility. Over the following weeks, they worked together to stabilize the sector, strengthen alliances, and ensure that the events of the crisis would lead to lasting peace. Marcus' approach, combining human creativity with careful observation, allowed them to predict potential conflicts and address them before they escalated. The Ceralian people, initially skeptical of humanity's value in interstellar politics, began to recognize the capabilities Marcus demonstrated. They saw that humans were not impulsive, fragile, or unpredictable, as some had assumed. Instead, they were intelligent, adaptable, and capable of moral and strategic reasoning that could rival centuries of alien tradition. For the first time in history, humans were not merely participants in interstellar politics. They were equal partners, respected for both intellect and insight. Marcus' calm leadership, combined with Solara's authority and experience, created a balance that reassured both humans and aliens alike. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Solara spoke softly. "I have traveled across galaxies, seen countless civilizations, and ruled an empire, and yet it is humanity's spirit, your insight, creativity, and moral clarity that impresses me most." Marcus smiled, gazing at the stars. "Humans are not perfect, but we learn, adapt, and persevere, and when we work together, humans, aliens, any species, we can achieve what none could do alone." Solara reached out and placed a hand over his. It was a gesture of trust, acknowledgement, and partnership. "Then together we will shape the future, not just for humanity or the Ceralian Empire, but for the galaxy itself." Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The galaxy was vast, full of uncertainty, challenges, and opportunities. Yet in this moment, side by side with Solara, he felt the power of unity, the power of human ingenuity. combined with alien experience, forming a force capable of shaping worlds. And the stars above, silent witnesses to the extraordinary events below, seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the partnership, the understanding, and the human spirit that had proven itself worthy in a galaxy that had once doubted it. The alliance between humans and Cerealians would endure, strengthened by mutual respect, trust, and insight. Rogue factions, political intrigue, and cosmic challenges would arise again, but Marcus and Celara had proven that together they could overcome any obstacle. Human ingenuity had been tested, observed, and celebrated. It had outshone fear, outmaneuvered threats, and inspired allies. And at the center of it all was Marcus Hale, a human who saw the universe not just as it was, but as it could be. Celara, once hidden behind a mask of servitude, had discovered not only the truth of Marcus' character, but the depth and potential of humanity itself. Together, they had faced danger, uncertainty, and complexity, and together they had prevailed. The galaxy awaited. And now it would witness humanity's brilliance, guided by wisdom, insight, and a partnership forged across stars, species, and trust. Marcus and Celara stood together, looking toward that future, ready to meet it with intelligence, courage, and the remarkable ingenuity that defined humanity. The story had reached its climax, but the journey of understanding, partnership, and human excellence would continue, a testament to the HFY spirit that shone brighter than any star in the galaxy. And in that shining moment, one truth was undeniable. Humans could face the universe with wisdom, creativity, and courage, and they would not just survive, but thrive, shaping the galaxy in ways even the stars themselves could not predict.